What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Last week I received a DM on Instagram with some of you enthusiasts asking me what I thought the most intense wooden coaster in the world was. Not many are left, but rides like the Voyage, the Beast, El Toro, and T-Express are things that came to my mind at first. Rather than answer them though, I flipped the question and they told me it was most definitely El Toro. Now I thought about my response and whether I agreed, and don't get me wrong, El Toro's a great ride, but then I had another coaster pop into my head. Defunct coasters count too. And there is one, in my opinion, that no one can dispute amongst wooden coasters, and quite frankly steel. Opening in 1926, today's coaster is often regarded as the most extreme roller coaster ever built, yes, the most extreme, and operated for 20 years before closing for good. It literally had a registered nurse on duty who often tended to riders who fainted, and it was the limit, still to this day, of what wooden coasters could achieve. So, what is it, and where did it come from? This is the story of the insane and extreme Crystal Beach Cyclone. The Crystal Beach Cyclone opened on May 29, 1927 at Crystal Beach Park in Ontario, Canada. Designed by Harry G. Traver, the ride was part of a trio of coasters that would come to be known as the Terrifying Triplets, consisting of the Crystal Beach Cyclone, the Revere Beach Lightning, and the Schneck brothers aptly named Cyclone at Palisades Amusement Park. Of the three, the Crystal Beach version was the most infamous and was responsible for the majority of hype around coasters at the time. At just 96 feet tall, the coaster had a length of 3,000 feet and lasted an extremely short 40 seconds. But it wasn't the height nor the speed that made the ride so outrageous, though I should note it was a record holder in both at the time. The ride's intensity came from a non-stop series of tight turns and wild airtime that had riders absolutely stunned. In fact, the only straight trap featured anywhere on the coaster was actually in the station, plus just a small trim that was added later. And as you might have seen in the thumbnail, one turn in particular that neared a 90-degree bank at ground level. It was this turn in specific that was said to have knocked riders completely unconscious. As you can imagine, there was quite a bit of hype around it, and when the Cyclone first opened, the line to ride the thing was out the door, and people came from all over the world to experience it. According to Wikipedia, reports said the ride drew 75,000 people on opening day, and crowds were in fact so heavy that a railing was broken by those pushing to try and get close to the ride. One patron actually recalled riding it 67 times opening day. The ride was a pretty big hit. Now, fun fact for you guys, I actually managed to find somebody online who actually wrote it and wrote about their experience on the ride, so I'm going to introduce Irma Andrews. This is just an AI voice of her, but nonetheless, this should be pretty cool because these are direct quotes from her experience on the ride.
I rode the Cyclone a lot. I was quite used to thrilling rides, you know, ho-hum, passe, but it was a real pisser. At one point it looked like you were going to go right into the drink because the ride was built on stilts, you see, and it jutted out over the lake, and you'd turn and swoop down right there. They had a nurse stationed at the end of it because people would come off sick or injured.
And this nurse was no joke. Apparently she became very well known and ended up staying on payroll to lower insurance for the park. Not to mention an alleged hot dog stand outside the coaster which also sold splints. But if injuries at the time weren't shutting it down, what did? Well, there were a few things. First, the coaster became an absolute maintenance nightmare. Like even nowadays, guys, on some of these modern wooden coasters, parks struggle to keep them open. After 10 years of operation with the Cyclone, the extreme stress put on that coaster every day caused it more downtime than uptime, and it started getting costly. According to Robert Cartmell's book titled The Incredible Scream Machine, A History of the Roller Coaster, a man who worked at Palisades where the Cyclone's sister coaster operated said that he could not remember 1 week where it operated every day. Quote,
"Structural and mechanical failures prevented it from being able to be open on anything resembling a regular schedule, and the ride's sheer viciousness did not endear it to the park's visitors."
End quote. Despite a refurb in 1938, this plus growing safety concerns all added up and the ride was shut down for good in 1946. That said, the Cyclone had been a symbol of the golden age of wooden coasters, but by the end, it was clear that Traver's extreme style was no longer what the public wanted. Traver himself actually passed away in 1961 a while back, along with his entire company Traver Engineering and its 5 coasters. Now, as for Crystal Beach itself, it had been a popular destination for decades, but like many other amusement parks at the time, it unfortunately fell victim to changing times and shifting entertainment preferences. After the Cyclone's closure, the park continued to operate for a few more decades, but it eventually closed in 1989 as well, making way for residential development. So, with all that said, The Cyclone truly was a marvel of engineering and must have been quite the experience. This is one of those defunct coasters I wish I could have ridden, and I'm super intrigued by it and the fact that it just existed at all. I do want to ask, do you guys think this was actually more extreme than rides like Toro, Voyage, and T-Express? I'm not saying better, but more extreme. Personally, I imagine so when I sent this back to that group chat, and there were some pretty funny responses. Nonetheless, if you enjoyed today's video, please also consider liking and subscribing. Lots of work goes into these, and this video was a revisit of the Cyclone that I'd done a couple years back. So if you feel like you've seen this before, you probably have, but I just rewrote the script because I had some more info on it. Anyways, I'd appreciate anything you guys can do. Stay tuned for another video coming in a couple days as well. We're going to be releasing part 1 of Phantasialand. So I know a lot of people are looking forward to that, and we will see you all there. Thanks again. See you.